like to give a brief statement. I've worked with the LAPD quite a bit over the last 6-7 weeks. I can't tell you how grateful I am to the LAPD. All of Heidi's friends that have been helpful, the news media that's been helpful. The one place that I think that we need some help, and the reason why I'm doing this today is for a little bit of public appeal.
Welcome to Stillspeakpod. This video is going to be about Heidi Planck. Yes, we're back at Heidi because today there was massive developments and we got more information, and it's not looking good for Heidi Planck. And I already kind of figured that it wasn't going to be a good ending. She's been missing for 6 going on 7 weeks. She was last seen on October 17th. It is now November 9th or the 30th. It's the 29th. And so it's been quite a while. And in the year 2021, it's actually really hard, unless you're going off the grid or into the mountains, to basically disappear. It really is. Because there's so many different ways to track you. You would need an extensive plan. It's really hard to pull off. It just is. And recently I actually saw a study that was done that says that the average American is caught on camera 238 times a week, averaging 34 times a day. And it's so weird when you think about that, right? Because you just go about your business. You drive, you go to work, or take your kids to school, you go shopping. You know that these places have cameras, but while you're there, you're not thinking like, oh, I'm on camera right now. So to think that 34 times in a day you're on camera is rather creepy in a way, but good in circumstances when somebody goes missing, right? So in my head, I was like, I don't know. I don't think this is going to end well. I know there was a lot of people who thought that, she left her son and she was in hiding and it had to do with her job, and she just, vanished and voluntarily. And I just couldn't really get on board with it, although I did think that it could be a possibility, because at that point, we didn't have anything. We haven't had much factual information to go off. So when you don't have factual information, then anything's possible. So now we have more information. So today, law enforcement was searching a landfill, and this news broke. It is the Chiquita Canyon landfill, privately operated site where commercial haul-away trash containers across Southern California are often dumped. And the LAPD said in a statement that it appears that Heidi died at an apartment building in downtown LA in an incident, and forensic evidence found at that building led to the landfill search. And they honed in on a specific area of this landfill. What's really fascinating here is that the day that they actually found this forensic evidence in the high-rise building in downtown LA, where the dog had been found, they also spotted and quietly impounded Heidi's Range Rover. And it was on a street nearby in another parking garage to another apartment building. And this took place on November 4th. So again, I just said it's the 29th. This was 25 days ago. And they found her car, and yet they never let the public know that. They just quietly took the car. That's actually highly unusual. Usually they'll say, we're looking for Heidi, we're looking for this car. And then what happens is if they find the car, then they say, well, we have the car, now we're just looking for Heidi, okay? In this case, police haven't said anything. They haven't held a press conference. They haven't, had their media person speak out, and they didn't share this information. Very abnormal. And in addition to that, what's really striking to me is that with cases like this, where a lot of people are following the case, you will have the locals who are keeping an eye out for anything unusual to report to social media, to be like, oh my God, the police are at the Hope and Flower, or, oh my God, I saw the police and they were by what I believe to be Heidi's car and I saw them towing it. They'll go live or they'll make a post and then everybody kind of scrambles to figure out if it's true or not. Yet 25 days have gone by and not a single person came forth to say that this car had been found. And you would think in a downtown area where it's populated and people are walking the street and coming and going from their apartment buildings that, they would have seen this car being towed and they would have known that it was Heidi's car. Now, is it possible that people in the area don't know that she's missing from that area? I mean, yeah, some people don't pay attention to the news. Some people don't pay attention to missing flyers. They just go about their business. But it would be weird, right? Because it's been on the news a lot in that area, and the friends have been out there posting flyers everywhere and going to the building. I don't know. Maybe they did it late at night and nobody saw it. Who knows? But they found her car, and it was near the Hope and Flower, but was not parked in the Hope and Flower parking garage. So that's a big piece of information that we have now. In addition, we have this hint at forensic evidence being found at the building that led to this landfill, and they refer to it as she died at this building in an incident. From my experience, law enforcement will not say somebody died without something pretty concrete showing such. And they don't, guess or make such a big assumption about a death of somebody. It's usually like a significant amount of blood was found. So much blood that the person couldn't survive whatever happened to them, okay? Like too much blood loss. You might find, I hate to say it, but a body part that proves that person is dead, obviously. If they're missing a hand, they're most likely not alive. It's not typical that you would get DNA at a crime scene of somebody's handprint and you automatically jump to the assumption the person's dead. So I don't know what they found, but it's forensic, and it's enough for them to believe that she's most likely deceased and possibly in this landfill, or they're looking for specific evidence in the landfill, or both. They're looking for her and more evidence. Is it possible that she's not deceased and they're wrong? I mean, maybe, but it's very slight. Again, law enforcement typically does not come to that conclusion of somebody dying without something pretty severe to show them that. But there is that small little because we don't know what they have. So we can say that there's this very, very small chance that they're wrong until we know what it is they actually have. Now, if they come out and they say, oh, we found a hand, well then, yeah, she's deceased. So we have to wait and see if they end up sharing any more information. This is the most we've gotten out of them, so I'm really not expecting a whole lot of information to come from them. If we get any sort of information eventually, it's probably going to be from the ex-husband, since he's been the most vocal in the story. And as a matter of fact, I forgot, they did actually specify that they're looking for human remains and to collect any related evidence. Now, I don't think that they believe that she's in the landfill because, let's say, they found her shirt, because that's a pretty big leap, okay? Or any type of item that belonged to her, like a wallet or an ID. It's more. It's definitely more than that. And we know for sure that it's some type of forensic. Now, I want to talk about a few things here, okay? Let's start with this guy who was in a group for Heidi Planck, and he joined the group, and he had, like, no profile picture, and I can't even find his profile anymore. It may be out there, but I can't find it. He left the group. But before he left the group, he had said a number of different things. In addition to sharing video, he claimed to be a resident of the building, Hope and Flower, and he even claimed to live on the exact floor that Heidi's dog was found, which immediately kind of made me go, because what's the odds in this huge 2 buildings, because there's 2 buildings, of all these apartments. I forget the number of apartments off the top of my head for my research, but I want to say, I think it was 730 apartments, okay, that this guy happened to live on that exact floor. So, someone can say, well, maybe he heard about her missing and her dog being found on that floor, and so he joined groups. Okay, all right, a little weird, but okay, that's possible, right? But when you mix it in with some of the things he was saying, and then the fact that he left the group, and I can't find the profile, then it starts to get a little creepy, in my opinion. Oftentimes, suspects will insert themselves into an investigation or even join Facebook groups and, kind of go along with everybody and speculate and make theories or have some type of inside knowledge. Now, I'm not saying this guy did something to Heidi, but I did want to share some of the things he said and then connect it to what's happening now that makes me raise my eyebrow, okay? And it does make me wonder. Let me start by saying that someone on Reddit had said that there was a smell of death coming from the garbage chute at the Hope and Flower. Now, if you listen to my other videos, I am very skeptical of sources, witnesses, or people who just come out of nowhere and make these random claims. I don't immediately believe them. I kind of put them on the back burner and I wait for more information to see if I believe that person or not. And Reddit is kind of known for having all sorts of random sources appearing on there and claiming all sorts of things. And so when I saw it, I was kind of like, come on, I don't know if I believe that. Like, how convenient for you to say that this garbage chute, had the smell of death. Okay. And then I saw some other residents claiming that they never smelled anything. So then I was like, all right, well, who do you believe, right? Like, you have to decide who's more believable to you. So then I was like, who knows? I mean, maybe, maybe not, who knows? Okay. And then this guy who I'm referring to, and I'm not even going to give you his name because I can't even find the profile. I think it was a completely made up name. Claimed that he too smelled it, and all the way onto the 28th floor. And in one of his comments, he said, when I saw reports on Reddit that other residents smelled it too, that was a red flag. So he saw this Reddit comment as well. The chute door couldn't have been open on multiple floors. The repairs for the chute were next to the elevators on the first floor. So he's making this comment about him also smelling this stench, okay, after seeing the person on Reddit saying such, because, he smelled it, then he saw it on Reddit, that somebody else smelled it, then that was a red flag to him. Then he goes on to say that, that was the first and only time that he ever smelled the trash chute, and he said, "I'm skeptic that a murder occurred here, but that stench, it wasn't a normal trash smell. I can't describe it. I'm on 28. I think the trash falls to the basement 1 level below ground. That's a long way for a stench." So do you see why I'm kind of like, right? Because now they're looking for Heidi in a landfill. And where does garbage go once it goes down the chute and into the basement? To a landfill. In addition to these comments, okay, he also had posted video from the 28th floor where he walks, you don't see him, he's just videotaping, to the garbage chute and shows people how big it is and, opens the door and kind of looks inside. Yes, he did that. And I think it was the next day after posting this video, he left the group and I no longer can find his profile. This was about 3 weeks ago, which is roughly around the time that police found some sort of forensic evidence in the building that leads them to believe that Heidi died in a quote-unquote incident. He also said that the building is a good spot for a planned murder to take place. He mentioned no cameras in the garage, no cameras in the hallways, and residents are afraid to talk. Okay, so I find this really hard to believe. I told you in another video that there's a building right there, very close to the Hope and Flower, where another woman had been killed by a resident. She worked there. And her leaving, she was seen with him, and then she was seen walking with him to his apartment, and then he's seen snatching her and bringing her into his apartment. It was all caught on video. And this building is just as nice as the Hope Flower. And they had surveillance. So, plus we also know that law enforcement had to get a search warrant to get the camera footage from the Hope and Flower. So if there's no cameras in the garage, there's no cameras on the floors, then that would only leave the amenities and the lobby. I find that really hard to believe. I really do. And from what I'm seeing on the Hope and Flower, what I've researched from it, it does appear that they have a pretty in-depth security team. And I actually know somebody who used to work at a very large high-rise building, and they used to work in the control room for the surveillance cameras, and they would have 50 screens, and they had to watch all of them. And so, I don't know, I would find it really hard to believe that the only cameras in these two massive buildings is in the lobby and in the amenities. I just do. I'm not sure I believe that, but who knows? Then he talks about the video that he took, and he says that it was a friend of his, and that he had that person record so that he can't be identified. Okay. And why exactly? So she can be identified? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What are you so afraid about? It would have just been your voice, not you. I mean, he was just videotaping the garbage chute, so you made your friend do it so that you can be safe? This is all very odd. Then he claimed that no one was talking about it, that people aren't watching the news. I mean, these are big, assumptions he's making, okay? But almost like he was watching to see how the other residents were reacting to somebody missing from their building, okay? Because, I mean, how do you know what everybody in this big building is doing? How do you know that every resident in the 700 and something apartments in there aren't watching the news? How do you know they're not talking about it to each other? Did you ask everybody? Very weird. Then somebody posted that she found that some of the units in there were dispensaries. And he made a comment like, well, now you know why people aren't talking. And then somebody was like, oh, well, that's cool. Definitely seems entertaining. And he's like, well, that's why this Heidi situation is bugging me. If someone brought her here for bad, then that person was probably a short-term rental or knew someone who worked there. This ain't that vibe. Girls here, top tier of all of that. Guys are protective of the ladies. This next comment is, I don't know, it's rubbing me so badly. So, he said, someone planning to throw the body would probably look into this. Our chutes used to get clogged almost weekly and then became every few months. Someone who resides here wouldn't pick our chute. It's not reliable. The body has a greater likelihood of being found versus making it to the dump. Then somebody said, I think the likelihood of the chute is slim. However, the fact her dog was found on the 28th floor, there's a chute a small frame body can fit. It's a logical one to think on and to rule out at the very least. Now, this next thing he says, he's talking about some guy that somebody was asking about. This is his words, not mine, so don't come for me. He said, there's a guy that looks like this man who walks a dog and is friendly with chicks with dogs. Rather convenient. And could be mistaken identity, but there aren't that many black dudes that have that look. He looks well educated and clean cut. There aren't many dudes here who wear collared shirts, so this type of guy would stand out. So yeah, again, if you just look at this and you go, oh, this guy from the 28th floor, he joined the group and he's just curious. Okay, yeah, sure. Add all this in, and it's highly alarming to me. It just is. He's the one talking about the shoot. He's the one videoing the shoot, worried about him being identified, trying to say, oh, there's this black guy who, is friendly with chicks with dogs, as if he knows everything that goes on in this building. This isn't like, okay, for example, I used to live in an apartment, okay? And we had buildings like 1, 2, 3, and each building, right, had, one apartment on the bottom, one apartment on the top, and there's like 8 total. So like 4 apartments down, 4 apartments up, like garden apartments. In that type of situation, you do notice the coming and goings of everybody, their patterns of behavior. Like, oh, that's that guy who always does this. Oh, that's that guy who always does that, right? Because you see those people in the building frequently because there's only 8 apartments in that building. This is not the case. This is an enormous building. Tons and tons of people who live in this building. And it's all in 2 buildings, right? So it's easy to not even ever see somebody that you may live 1 floor above from because it's so big. So out of all these people, you know about this guy, okay, that looks well educated and clean cut and wears a collar and he hangs out with chicks with dogs by the building. And everybody in the building isn't watching the news. And that everybody in the building isn't talking about Heidi being missing. It's just, I don't know. If I had to say that she met with somebody in that building and something happened with her, and it's completely unrelated to the ex-husband, the job, etc. The first person I'm looking at, if I was law enforcement, is this dude. I get if it's in your building, you're going to be curious. I get it. But it's what he's saying that's making me uncomfortable. And it seems to be like he's trying to point away from the shoot. He's trying to point away from, it being a long-term resident. He's inserting this random guy who looks well-educated. So, yeah, I'm sorry, but he kind of creeps me out. And I don't know. He can be completely innocent, totally innocent. But I think that just his comments alone is enough, in my opinion, to look at him further. So, of course, when this information came out today about the landfill, everybody was like, oh my God, remember that guy? Maybe he was right after all. Which he never actually said that she went down the chute. He just talked about the stench. But he came up because of this. How convenient is that? He automatically now comes up because they're searching a landfill. I'm no garbage chute, expert. I've used them before in certain buildings. I know the basics of how to throw, a garbage bag down the chute. I'm not an expert. But I would think that if Heidi was pushed down the chute and was dead at the bottom of the chute, a level below, near the basement, okay, I would think that in order for the stench to travel 28 floors all the way up, that would require that every chute, the door was, or because there's like a flap, there's like I don't know how to explain it to you. There's like a flap, kind of like a fireplace when you open up the chute of the fireplace, right? So I would imagine that you would have to have every floor's chute open in order for that stench to travel all the way up to the 28th floor. But again, I'm no expert. But there are many, many, many stories out there. Some of them I've followed in the past. Some of them I actually heard about recently before even knowing about this landfill today. And others I actually looked up tonight of people being put into a chute, or police claim they accidentally fell into the chute. Now, every chute looks a little bit different. Some of them, where the story says that the person accidentally fell down the chute, I just don't even see how it's possible. I really don't. This isn't like, you trip and there's like a hole in the floor and you kind of like fall in, right? It's usually on the wall. And the opening is usually, a decent size for a garbage bag, but it's not like massive. So in order to like fall down it's just hard to believe that it's even possible, okay? Some go straight down, some go in and then down. I'm doing arm movements like you can see me right now. Anyways, so a lot of them you'd actually have to like wiggle yourself into to even get down to the main part to get all the way down to the bottom. If you really want to know about garbage chutes, you can Google it and look at pictures of it to see what I'm talking about. So, yeah, there's a lot of stories about this. And police referred to her as it being that she died at the building in an incident. You can take that any which way you want to. You can say that it was an accident. You can say that she was put in there. They did say that she died there. They didn't say she was killed there, although they didn't, refer to it as an accident. They referred to it as an incident. So it's very vague, and so we can kind of assume all these different things. If it was an accident of sorts, I find that hard to believe. But if it was, that means that we still don't know why she was there. Who was she visiting? And once she had this accident, okay, then didn't that person wonder where she went? And then wouldn't they have called the police? Like, oh my God, my friend like fell down the garbage chute? Yeah, they would, right? They'd be alarmed. She might be like, oh, I'm going to go throw out some garbage, and like walks out into the hallway and she doesn't come back. And then what? You don't say anything? You just like, oh, she must have left. That's it? You just, she left? You don't come out of your apartment, walk over to the garbage chute, look around for her, go down to the lobby, ask the front desk people, did you see this girl leave? She went to go throw something out. She didn't come back. Call the police and be like, I don't know. She was here. All she was going to do was go dump something in the garbage and she never came back. I don't know. Maybe not call the police, because if she's just there, like, let's say she went on a date, right? Maybe the date thought she like just didn't want to do the date anymore and left. Okay, fine. But still, wouldn't you have come out of your apartment to be like, where'd she go? And like look around and then being like, oh, okay, maybe she left. But then the second you start seeing flyers and the news, then you go, wait a minute. She went to the garbage chute. She never came back and now she's missing. And then go to the police and be like, I had her at my apartment, but she left and she went to the garbage chute and never came back. And then I saw her missing flyer and I don't know what the hell happened to her. And now I'm really concerned. And it's possible somebody did that, okay? Because the police haven't told us that. Just because they haven't told us that doesn't mean that somebody hasn't done that. At the same time, though, maybe they wouldn't do that because they'd be concerned that they would be implicated in doing something to Heidi. I don't know. It's just weird. So I'm not really buying that this was some sort of accident. She didn't live there. If she lived there, okay, and they came back and said, oh, she accidentally fell down this garbage chute. She was throwing out the garbage, and as she was pushing it, she lost her balance and she fell in. I'd be like, okay, well, that's a tragic accident. A little weird, but okay. But to be in a building that nobody seems to know why she was there or who she was meeting with, and then to accidentally fall down this building's, garbage chute, it just sounds ridiculous. So at minimum, there is somebody in that building at some point, or still is, who knows why Heidi was at that building. And as far as we know, right, they haven't come forth, although they might have to police. Now, something terrible happening to Heidi and her being disposed of in the garbage chute is much more believable. And because this building is so freaking large, I think it would be really easy for somebody to dispose of a body. If you kill somebody in a home, okay, and you have to now remove that body from the home to transport it to wherever you're going to dispose of that body, you're having to walk from your door, depending on where your driveway is and where the car is, etc., and get it into the car. And, you're risking a neighbor seeing you. You're taking a risk of being caught on somebody's Ring camera. Same thing with smaller apartment complexes like the one I used to live in, where it was, several buildings and each building only had 8 apartments in it, okay? Because you typically had to walk past somebody's door, you had your upstairs person who was right above you, etc. But in this high rise, you kill somebody, right? And all you gotta do is make it from your door to your chute. And if you know that floor and you know when it has the most activity, you wait until there's less activity, and then, you're just going to throw out the garbage, and then you just kind of dump the person in the garbage chute. They go straight down to the basement. Nobody has a damn clue. Truck comes in, picks up the container, and off they go to a landfill. And you don't have to worry about actually being the person to transport them. And I've seen in other cases where where it might be like a hotel, which is a big building as well. I'm thinking of one case, it was in another country, and this dude was caught on camera every damn step he took. He was completely clueless about that area or that building and had no idea how much he would be caught on camera. And what happened is you see her go into his apartment, he exits the apartment, he goes downstairs, he gets like a luggage rack thing, you know, those things at a hotel where you can put your luggage on, and he brings it up to his room. And the next thing you know is he's got this large tote, or suitcase-like tote on this luggage rack, and then he comes down, he gets a cab, he's caught on camera in the cab, and he had her body in this luggage. He didn't have the luxury of a garbage chute. He had no choice but to figure out how to get her body from point A to point B, which was getting it from his room, down all these floors, in the elevator, out the front door, and also had to walk through the lobby with her, and quickly before anybody noticed anything, smelled anything, or got suspicious. Now, one of the big questions is about her car. Why was it parked somewhere else? Well, based upon some of the reviews I was reading about the Hope and Flower and some of the things that I saw online, I would say that, because the residents at the Hope and Flower have assigned parking, and they probably only have like a certain amount of spots for visitors, and it's downtown LA. And if you have 700 and something apartments and people have a lot of visitors, okay, then those visiting spots are going to go fast. And typically in cities, it's actually really hard to find parking spots. Now, I am very familiar with New York City, and in New York City, sometimes you have to park like 7 blocks away to get a parking spot and then walk, or you end up having to pay like $40 for 5 hours of parking, like a lot where there's like 150 cars piled on top of each other, and you can like barely even open your door and get out because that's how close the cars are. And then you also have parking garages and things of the sort. So I don't find it totally abnormal that she would have been parked somewhere else. But the fact remains, as far as we know, this dog was found on the 28th floor, right? And according to the ex-husband, Jim Wayne, who says that the person who found them said the dog was on the 28th floor, law enforcement hasn't confirmed this, but if that is true, then she was at the Hope and Flower, period. We also have the surveillance footage of her walking in the alley behind the Hope and Flower, which I briefly wanted to talk about. Someone commented on my video about that footage and called me fake news because that video was not Heidi. That person had black hair, that dog had black hair, and that person had on black leggings and blah, 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 blah. I didn't even reply to the person because the comment was so ridiculous. It was a total waste of my time to even bother. If you've commented on any of my videos, you know that I try to reply to every single one of you. But with this one, I just kind of rolled my eyes and was like, I'm not even going here. Her friends have confirmed that video was Heidi. They even talked about the way she walked was the way they knew her to walk. The reason why everything looks darker is because of the camera and the time of day, and it was in an alley area. So you didn't have the sun in that area to light up the sidewalk and where she was. She has on the sweater that she had tied around her waist when she left her home earlier in the day. Okay? Her hair is not black. If you lighten up the video, you will see it is her. So I just wanted to say that. But when that video came out, I and many others were talking about, like, where was she walking to? Like, she has no purse. You saw a mask in her hand. And so we thought like maybe she was visiting with somebody and left her person side to go take the dog for a walk, to go to the bathroom, and then was going back to the building, right? But now with the information that her car was found elsewhere, it makes me wonder if what they caught of her walking with the dog was actually her walking from her car to the Hope Flower. Now, I want to read to you just a few stories involving garbage chutes. You have one where in Manhattan, a woman in 2018, yes, it was a famed pathologist, and originally her death was ruled a fatal accident by cops. But then new findings came out from the chief medical examiner for New York City that said that she actually may have been strangled to death. And that came out in 2020. And it actually talks about that her body was found July 10th, 2018 at the bottom of the trash chute connecting to the 27th floor of her Union Square building. So that's really fascinating. We originally just thought it was an accident, but further examination led them to believe that she actually may have been killed and then disposed of in the garbage chute from the 27th floor of her building. Another story that I actually saw 2 weeks ago, I saved it. I was going to bring you this story a few nights ago, but then I saw the story of Letitia Norris, who's missing in San Diego. And since this story is older, I decided to run with the Letitia story since she is still missing. But this was a student named Justine Gross, 19 years old. She was at Penn State University. She was reported missing November 11th of this month. A rubbish hauler had emptied a skip bin at the base of the chute in a Beaver Terrace apartment building and took the garbage to a dump where officers found her body on November 12th. So this isn't much older, but in addition to it being a couple of weeks ago, her body was also found. That's why I decided to go with the Letitia story first, since Letitia is still missing and this girl was found deceased. Now, officers say that surveillance footage showed the woman was alone when she entered a garbage room on the 11th floor of her building. They believe her death was an accident, but they're waiting for toxicology and autopsy reports. Now that's interesting because it was a garbage room, meaning that she went into a room. Doesn't necessarily mean that when she was in the room that she was alone in that room, right? It means that she entered that room alone, but does not mean she was alone in that room. Her mother said that a man met up with her and gave her drugs, which made her daughter panic. He said that she had a really bad reaction, was panicking, and that he was trying to take her back to her apartment on the 10th floor. And it's unclear what drugs he had given her. And Justine actually sent a Snapchat to a friend which read, "Something happened just before she allegedly fell down the chute." The mother was concerned that someone was maybe chasing her, or she thought somebody was chasing her, and that maybe she went into the chute because she was on drugs and, thought that it was a staircase and possibly fell down the chute. But that was recent and it's very sad. And I think in a future video, we're going to talk more about that because the mom has a lot of questions, right? I think that's really hard to accept. If somebody came to you and was like, your loved one fell down this garbage chute accidentally, I can understand why the mom is questioning that and wondering if there's something more to the story. They're still waiting on the toxicology and autopsy results, so I'll be really curious what they come back with. And I don't blame her for being curious, although when you add the drugs to the mix, of course, there is that possibility that she was totally out of it depending on the drug, and she did accidentally fall down it. In January of this year, actually January 1st, a woman 34 years old was found partially lodged in a garbage chute near the 3rd floor in Staten Island, New York. And the woman actually lived on the 4th floor, so just a floor above. And her death is being investigated because she was partially lodged in the garbage chute. So that tells me that this chute was not very large, and so of course you have to wonder, if this was accidental, then how did she get partially, stuck? But they haven't shared pictures of how she was partially stuck. Maybe she did accidentally fall and then at some point got stuck, but they didn't, elaborate. Another woman in Portland, Oregon, she fell 12 stories down a garbage chute, and prior to that, she had trashed an apartment, and it seems like she was really rowdy and out of it before it happened, so it does appear that it could be accidental, but it does not appear that they have come to that conclusion yet. There's another case of a woman named Phoebe Handsjuk, I think that's how you say it, and I believe this was in another country. It's actually a really popular story in the true crime community as far as people do discuss it all the time. And she had fallen 12 from the 12th floor of a luxury apartment building. And they actually wrote it off initially as a suicide. And who the hell is throwing themselves down a garbage chute to commit suicide? But okay. And then they later said that it was just a bizarre accident fueled by alcohol and a sleeping drug. But her family insisted that it was foul play. And the family hired somebody who has worked 30 years in waste. And this particular guy said that he had never heard of anybody falling to their death down a garbage chute until he heard about Phoebe's case. And he pointed out something because he made a replica of the chute she went down, and he tried to see if he can get in it, etc. He did experiments, and he made a point that her fingers would have been bruised and injured from the door snapping back into place. Why is that interesting? Because it depends on the garbage chute. Some of them are the type that you pull down, and it kind of has that bounce. So as soon as you let go of it, it shuts. The door snaps back up. And some of them, even if you open it to the side, may have that same thing where as soon as you let go of that door handle, it's going to snap and get you. So that was an interesting take. She also went in head first. And he talked about, if you're falling down it, you would imagine that the hands would try to, catch yourself, to kind of pull yourself up as you're falling on the inside of that chute, and you would have fingerprints everywhere of you trying to get a grip to pull yourself back up, and there was none. There's many other stories. The reason why I'm pointing this out to you is that it could be accidental and it cannot be accidental. So you definitely have cases out there of people falling down garbage chutes. And it really depends, and there are a variety of different types of chutes. In every case that I just told you about, that person lived in the building that they fell down the garbage chute. It was not a case of a woman going to some other random building and happened to fall down the 28th floor from the garbage chute all the way down to the bottom. And you would imagine, let's say you live in a building And let's say you have a really heavy garbage bag. Now, I'm not a big person by any means, and so we go through a ton of garbage because we're a big household. And some bags are really, really heavy. And even though my garbage pail is right around the corner by my garage door, I have my husband do it. But if he's not here for whatever reason, and I have to do it, and I can't wait for him, I'm kind of dragging that thing along. And then I kind of have to bend down and use my knees to lift it up and throw it in the garbage pail, right? And sometimes when you do that, it kind of throws your body forward or backwards, depending on how you're lifting. And so you can imagine a scenario where somebody is, depending on the garbage chute and how it's displayed on the wall, or if it's a room, is it a hole, is it on the wall, etc., that somebody is lifting a heavy garbage bag and loses their balance trying to push this heavy bag into this chute, and losing their balance and falling. And then once you're in, it's that kind of metal where it's kind of slippery, and then you kind of, just go flying down this garbage chute. But what the hell is Heidi Planck doing with some huge ass heavy garbage bag, right? So I don't think that's the scenario here at all. If anything, she was throwing away like a dog poop bag because she had the dog with her, right? So you would think, if she walked the dog and maybe she picked up after the dog, what else could she possibly have thrown out? Even if she was visiting somebody, what is she doing? Taking out their garbage? I mean, why would she be at this garbage chute? It doesn't make any sense that this is an accident. Now, there is a possibility here that she didn't get to this landfill if she's at this landfill via the chute. There is that possibility here. I think that we're assuming that that's how she got there because there is this garbage chute in this building, okay? And that's the last known location we know of Heidi. But there is still a scenario here where she was harmed in the building, but then taken out of the building, which I don't really know why somebody would do that when they have the garbage chute, but that they took her out of the building and dumped her elsewhere. And this particular landfill, services that entire area. For now, I'm going to think that it's most likely the chute, and that's how she got there, but there's a possibility that it wasn't that. Another thing people were talking about is somebody harmed Heidi in this building and disposed of her body, why would they be sloppy and not go and try to find her car? They could have, okay? Maybe she had her keys in her pocket, and after they disposed of her, they were like, oh shit, the keys were in her pocket. Maybe they did go looking for the car and they never located it. Maybe she never told the person where her car was. Who knows? Maybe that person considered that there may be cameras around where her car was parked and didn't want to take the risk of being caught on camera moving the car. But without the keys, you ain't taking the car anywhere. Unless you know how to, break into a car and get it to start, etc. Then you're just drawing a whole lot of attention to yourself. That being said, though, this particular area had several car break-ins in the days surrounding when Heidi was there. And now police have had that vehicle for 25 days. They definitely have done all they had to do on it as far as forensic testing, looking for evidence or clues, etc. We have no idea what they found. And there may or may not be evidence of somebody trying to get into this car at some point. If so, they might be able to pick up some type of DNA of some sort, like touch DNA. And there's still so much to talk about because we could just sit here and speculate and guess and make all these assumptions all night long. But it is going on an hour now. So in addition to this information today, Jim Wayne, the ex-husband, has spoken out again. So he was speaking out in the beginning, and then at some point he stopped. And I said, that's not abnormal to see, because what happens is people will speak out. The public attacks them or accuses them in some way. And then at that point, they're just kind of like, I'm not even going to speak out anymore. What's the point? I already gave you all the information I know, and I'm just being attacked, so I'm not going to bother. Well, he broke his silence today. I am going to do certain clips of what he said. He looks to be outside of Heidi's home giving this interview to several news outlets. And I will link to you the full interview in the description if you want to watch its entirety. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about him and a lot of theories. And for me, I considered him, but the second we had the surveillance footage of her outside the Hope and Flower, at that point, I kind of just crossed him out, because I thought there's just no way he can be involved unless it was a hitman. And then I started thinking about a hitman and like, why would he do a hitman and blah, 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 blah. And so I went through all these things and we talked about it in other videos, and I just kind of came to the conclusion that he just might be a weird dude, right? He might just be an ass, right? Doesn't mean he's a killer. I know a lot of people are unsettled by the fact that he was so vocal. But you have to remember, who is there to really speak for Heidi besides her friends? Usually in a case, like if it's an adult, you have the parents speaking out, or the husband, if he's not involved. If a child's missing, it's the parents. We heard from her mother, but it was only in one interview, and that was it. We have not seen her out giving interviews, begging, pleading. I haven't seen any footage of her out in downtown LA searching for her. I know she lives in New York State. I don't even know if she went out there at all. And so, he's the ex-husband, yes, but he's also the father of Heidi's son. So it's really not weird for him to be speaking out and trying to get her name out there for the sake of his son. Not particularly himself, but for the child. In this interview that he did today, it actually wasn't like an interview. It was more like, it kind of looked like a press conference of sorts. And basically he was saying that there's people out there who know information, who are not coming forth, and we need help. We need to get the word out more. Help us, media, please. And he talked about how he knew her car had been found, that he talks to law enforcement sometimes 5 times a day, sometimes once a day. He talked about the son. He did seem to get a little upset when asked about how he was feeling about this new news, and he talked about it being hard, and then he went back to talking about the son. And he has sunglasses on, and I was looking through the sunglasses to his eyes because I wanted to see what his eyes were doing as he was being questioned. And I gotta say, he kept eye contact with whoever was speaking with him. He didn't have a ton of blinking going on. There was no twitch or any type of soothing where people often do when they're lying. He seemed rather normal to me, and I didn't get any bad vibes from him at all. Is it weird that he's out there saying we need help, we need somebody to come forth rather than the police? Yeah, it is a little weird, but in this story, the police have been quiet. They have not held any press conferences. They haven't really said much of anything. So in this story, it's not weird to me that it's him coming out saying, listen, the 11-year-old boy needs to know what happened to his mother, and we need help with finding somebody who knows what happened to her, to call this anonymous tip line, etc. He may feel like, well, the police haven't done it, so let me do it. And in large cases, which I wouldn't say Heidi's case is large, it's definitely well known, but it's not let's say Gabby Petito's case. In the larger cases, family members, friends, or anybody of the sort that's connected to the person, usually does not get information from law enforcement before we, the public, get it. A lot of time they're getting it at the exact same time as everybody else. As effed up as that sounds, it's true. Sometimes, it depends on the agency and the local police, they might get information, 15 minutes before us, okay? It's really not common in those types of cases to see law enforcement sharing information with the family or friends that the public doesn't know yet. And I think that's one of the biggest things people assume, is that family and friends know more than we do, when usually that's not the case. I know several cases where the victim's family found out the person was deceased on the news at the exact same time we did. How awful is that? Yes, it's happened many, many times. So it's a little odd to me, but at the same time, since it's not a big high-profile case, that he knew that her car had been found weeks ago. He knew that, and that's really interesting to me. Because the reason why law enforcement typically doesn't like to give family a heads up is because telephone, right? The game of telephone. So if they tell the mom, and the mom's exploding and wants to tell somebody, and she tells her Aunt Kathy, now Aunt Kathy knows, and now Aunt Kathy goes and tells cousin Laura, and cousin Laura is telling her friend, and the next thing you know, before law enforcement even comes out with the information, it's all over social media and everybody knows about it. So they don't like to do that. They don't want to release certain information because they have specific times and reasons for putting out information, so they want to be careful and not take the risk that it's going to get leaked out before they share it. It's also interesting that Jim Wayne knew this about her car, and he was really talkative to the media at one point and then stopped, that he didn't come out with this information sooner, which leads me to believe that investigators had asked him not to. And if that's the case, and he respected that because it's an active investigation, then props to him for keeping it quiet. Because everybody's like, oh, he's such a blabbermouth. Oh my God, he has so much to say. Well, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, is he really a blabbermouth when he didn't even come to the media right away and say, oh my God, they found her car? I mean, he didn't do that, so he can't be that much of a blabbermouth. And I'm not looking to defend this dude. I think that their custody battle was, not good. They did not have an amazing relationship. And, they definitely had their fair share of ups and downs. A lot of it was much older and does not speak to what's currently happened. And so, I think that the only reason why he's so involved, why he was the one to report her missing, the one to speak out for her, etc., is most likely for his son. Not particularly Heidi, okay? As far as him being ruled out, again, law enforcement has been quiet. They haven't said anything about anything until today, when they confirmed this search at the landfill, that they had found her car, that they believed that she had died in an incident at that building. And it's also interesting to me because, when a case goes quiet, which this case did appear to be starting out fast and then it slowed down, and we haven't talked about Heidi in a while, and so everybody assumes that law enforcement isn't doing anything because we're not hearing anything, we're not getting any information, there's no news articles, etc. But all along they were working really hard to figure out what happened to Heidi, and they actually made a lot of developments in that period of time where everything seemed quiet, to the point that they know that she most likely is dead and that she may be in this landfill, and they have her car. So it's good to know that they were taking the case seriously, that they weren't blowing it off and saying, well, she's an adult, what they normally do when it comes to an adult being missing. They kind of blow it off at first and say, well, you know, she's an adult and she can leave if she wants to and she doesn't have to call you, etc. I think the dog being found at this building made the circumstances mysterious. And when a case has something that's mysterious is usually when police get a little bit more serious, when it involves an adult. Or if there's reason to be concerned, like the person has a medical condition or something to that effect, where there's a high concern for their safety. So it's just really good to see that they were taking it seriously, that they were looking for this woman and trying to figure out what happened to her, because yes, there's an 11-year-old boy out there tonight who doesn't know where his mother is or what happened to her, and he needs some form of closure, and he does need to know what happened to his mother, especially as he's aging into his teens. He's going to have a lot of questions, and I hope that police can provide the answers for the family to share with him. Again, I could say so much more, but we're at 1 hour and 5 minutes now, which is way longer than I wanted to go. What I'm going to do is, at the end of this video, I'm going to put in a few clips of Jim Wayne's semi-looking press conference out of Heidi's home. And again, I'll link the entire interview in the description. My current theory, which has been my theory in the last few videos, is I think that she was meeting with someone, possibly somebody she was dating that she didn't want anybody to know because she had the other boyfriend, or possibly somebody who she thought was her friend. Something went wrong and she ended up dead and she was disposed of in the garbage chute. That's my current theory, and I'd love to know why she was there. That is like the biggest question in this whole case. So that's it. I'm wrapping it up. Maybe tomorrow night we can talk a little bit more about Heidi. All of this was completely off the top of my head because I didn't have any time to sit and, come up with a whole bunch of notes. I just started recording and just rolled with it, okay? So maybe tomorrow we can do a more focused discussion on all the possibilities in a more, flowing type of manner. But I also have another story to bring you, and I also wanted to go back in time with the Murdaugh story and start from the beginning again, because that story is so complex. I think we've lost sight of some of the big things that have happened, so it'll be really interesting to go back to the beginning and revisit it all in a timeline. So if you're following my Murdaugh videos, expect that. I don't want to give you an exact day, because anytime I say tomorrow or 2 days from now, then something happens and I can't get to it. So I'm not going to make any promises, but I'm working on it. Okay, I've started working on it and we're going to do it. I promise. There was also a few people that I shared their missing flyers in my Happy Thanksgiving video. A few of those people have been found since then. So some of them were found alive, some of them were found deceased. So I'm going to update you guys on who was found alive, who was found deceased. And I also did that video on 2 men that are missing in Orlando. Brian Bone has been found deceased. I put it in the comments. He was found in a nearby lake. We're waiting to see what the autopsy says. But the second man in that video in Orlando is still missing. So if you could share that video for the sake of Vladik, that'd be amazing. My pause button keeps getting stuck. Anyways, so that's it. Good evening. I'm going to bed. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
Resulting in Planck's death. What's your reaction to that?
It's really difficult, guys. because we all cared for Heidi a lot. I'm her ex-husband and I'm doing this. We have a child together. An 11-year-old boy needs some answers.